The October air over North Korea's eastern coast was heavy with ceremony and tension. Cameras from the state broadcaster captured Kim Jong Un stepping out of his black sedan. The red carpet rolled out before him. Officers in crisp naval uniforms stood in perfect rows, saluting as the country's supreme leader approached. The day's focus was the Navy's pride, the 5,000-ton destroyer Choe Hyon, a warship that Pyongyang says is built to defend the nation and, in Kim's words, to punish the enemy's provocations. As Kim advanced, the carpet under his polished black shoes stretched like a line of authority to the towering hull of the grey destroyer. Around him, senior military commanders, their jackets glittering with medals, clapped in unison. Kim paused to shake hands with naval officers, their expressions a mix of deference and resolve. The official applause echoed across the dock, amplified by the cameras that North Korean state television had positioned to broadcast every gesture of respect. Beyond the red carpet, the massive bulk of the Choe Hyon dominated the frame, its decks bristling with missile launchers and radar domes. Kim stood before it, almost dwarfed by the warship, and raised his hand in salute. To his side, a line of senior officials mirrored the gesture. Viewers of the evening broadcast saw a leader framed by steel and the sea, projecting strength not just to his own people, but to the outside world. The destroyer itself is one of only 2 vessels of its class in the North Korean arsenal. Naval analysts abroad have long debated its true capabilities, noting that Pyongyang often exaggerates the reach and sophistication of its weapons. Yet the symbolism was undeniable. North Korea was putting its limited but modernized naval firepower on display at a moment of heightened tension on the Korean peninsula. As the cameras followed Kim's slow and deliberate walk toward the ship, rows of sailors in blue and white uniforms snapped to attention. A military band played, its brassy notes carrying across the water. Kim stopped occasionally to exchange words with senior officers. While state television offered no audio of those brief exchanges, the official Korean Central News Agency later quoted Kim as declaring that the Choe Hyon was designed to crush the enemy's will and to respond decisively to any maritime provocation. Viewers then saw Kim begin the ascent up the steep metal steps that led to the destroyer's deck. His movements were slow but deliberate, each step seeming to carry the weight of both leadership and spectacle. Behind him, aides and generals followed, some clutching notebooks as if ready to record the leader's off-the-cuff instructions. On the pier below, other officers clapped as the Supreme Commander boarded the ship. Once on deck, Kim paused to take in the sight of the harbour, the calm blue waters, the distant outline of smaller patrol vessels, and the tight cordon of armed guards standing at attention. Cameras captured him standing at the railing, gazing outward, then turning to confer with the ship's captain. According to state media, Kim praised the vessel's crew for their discipline and urged them to always stay ready to strike back if the enemy dares to test our resolve. For several minutes, Kim inspected the ship's bridge, its radar consoles, and the banks of missile tubes. Official footage showed him pointing at various instruments as officers explained their function. Though the images were silent, KCNA's accompanying dispatch described him as expressing satisfaction that the Navy now had a powerful tool to safeguard the dignity of our state and our maritime borders. Throughout the inspection, the cameras occasionally cut to wide shots, sailors saluting on the dock below, officers clapping in formation, and military guards standing stiffly at each corner of the pier. These shots emphasized not just the scale of the event, but the disciplined choreography of a state visit carefully staged for domestic audiences. The symbolism of Kim's appearance aboard the Choe Hyon was not lost on international observers. The visit came just weeks after joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States, drills that Pyongyang routinely condemns as rehearsals for invasion. Analysts in Seoul and Washington saw Kim's tour of the destroyer as a calculated signal, a reminder that despite international sanctions and diplomatic isolation, North Korea remains determined to project military strength. On the evening news broadcast, the footage of Kim saluting on the destroyer's deck was played repeatedly, underscored by triumphant orchestral music. State anchors framed the visit as proof of the country's unbreakable will to defend its sovereignty. They highlighted Kim's remark that the destroyer was built to punish the enemy's provocations, a phrase that was later picked up by foreign wire services as a headline. Yet behind the dramatic images, questions lingered. Naval experts outside North Korea pointed out that while the destroyer's size and appearance were impressive, the country's shipbuilding capacity and access to modern weapons systems remain limited under international sanctions. Satellite imagery in recent years has shown the slow pace of new ship construction at North Korean shipyards. Some analysts suggested that the Choe Hyon was more a symbol of intent than a game-changing addition to the country's navy. Nevertheless, for the domestic audience watching that night, the message was clear. The leader was seen personally reviewing one of the nation's most powerful warships and assuring his people that any hostile act from abroad would be met with force. The image of Kim on the deck, framed against the ship's grey hull and the bright autumn sky, reinforced the narrative of a hands-on commander prepared to lead from the front. The visit also played into Kim's broader strategy of cultivating a powerful maritime image. In recent months, state media has showcased new submarines, coastal defence drills, and sea-based missile tests, portraying the Navy as a modernising force within the Korean People's Army. The appearance at the destroyer was the latest in a series of photo opportunities meant to bolster the perception that North Korea's military is not just a land power, but also a maritime contender. As the inspection concluded, Kim descended the steps back to the dock, pausing again to shake hands with senior officers. The applause from the assembled personnel rose in a synchronized rhythm. In the final shots of the broadcast, Kim stood once more before the towering ship, saluting as the sailors responded in unison, their voices carrying across the water in a sharp, coordinated shout. In the days that followed, North Korean newspapers splashed images of the visit across their front pages. Editorials praised the destroyer as a guardian of our seas and lauded Kim's leadership as fearless in the face of imperialist threats. International media, by contrast, focused on the leader's remark about punishing provocations, interpreting it as a warning to Seoul and Washington amid continuing regional tensions. For decades, the Korean peninsula has been one of the world's most volatile flashpoints. Military gestures, even ceremonial ones, often reverberate far beyond the shores where they occur. Kim's inspection of the Choe Hyon served both as a domestic rallying image and as a message to external rivals. North Korea wants to be seen as capable of defending its territorial waters and ready, at least in its own narrative, to retaliate if provoked. As night fell on the day of the visit, the destroyer's deck lights glowed over the harbour. State television ended its broadcast with a lingering shot of the ship's bow cutting through the darkness, the North Korean flag fluttering in the cool breeze. For the audience at home, it was a powerful tableau, a mix of patriotism, deterrence, and the carefully choreographed theatre that has long characterised the country's portrayal of its military power.